Hello and welcome to Hot Indonesia, the crossroads of smart conversation. I'm Dalton Tanonaka in Jakarta. Here is this week's H-I Hotlist. American isolation, why recent U.S. government actions, including nearly sending overseas student home, make no sense. We talk with journalist and educator May Lee in California. Travel tips, what the easing of coronavirus restrictions means if you want to fly into and around Indonesia. And money miracle, the surprising return of 500 million rupiah found on a train. Here are my co-hosts each and every week. Sandrina Malakiano, former TV news anchor, now a political marketing consultant. This week from her other home in Sanur, Bali. And Sandiaga Uno, business executive and former vice governor of Jakarta from his home in South Jakarta. Okay, here's hot topic number one, American isolation. It seems the world's biggest economy wants to go it alone. Critics say recent U.S. government actions or inaction have resulted in a spike in coronavirus cases, alienated global partners, and hurt an already desperate economy. A recent order from U.S. immigration came on July 6. All international students must leave the country if their classes are all online, as most are in this pandemic. That was called by educators and business leaders as irrational, cruel, and disturbing. But good news, earlier this week, the order was canceled. Let's bring in now May Lee, journalist and podcast host of The May Lee Show, also an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California. She joins us now from her home in Long Beach, California. May, what do you think caused the U.S. government to backtrack on the visa issue?
Well, the reports are that this was a very misguided decision last week, and it really did come suddenly. It caught all of us off guard. Nobody was expecting this decision. So universities and colleges were all preparing for the fall semester to begin in hybrid forms, meaning some in-person classes, some online. But then when we got this decision, it just threw everything out of kilter. So what we were told was, this was something that just came out of the blue. There wasn't any thought really put into this. And so therefore, we were all very confused in terms of, okay, what is the purpose of this? I think that's why you saw so many universities immediately jump at this and file lawsuits against the federal government.
It seemed to be another Trump administration decision, yeah, as you said, without much thought, but also, anti-immigrant, anti-international. Is that part of the picture, do you think, May?
Well, we couldn't help but think that way also because of his, previous decisions that constantly seemed to want to keep immigration at bay and immigrants out, and even, highly educated people from overseas wanting to come in. There have been restrictions placed on those people in terms of visa requirements and restrictions. So this seemed like it was par for the course in terms of putting more restrictions on students. But what was heartless was exactly that. These were students who wanted to come to America for a better education. And that's the dream. We all know this. So many students from overseas want to come to American universities because they're great and they want to be able to be educated that way. So that was the heartbreaking part of this decision. And I think that's why everyone was so angry and was willing to do whatever it took to get this decision reversed or something. We were all saying, okay, we got to figure this out. We're going to help these international students somehow, and we're going to get around this new restriction.
Yeah, and I think the legal action had to help. I mean, your university, USC, and others joined in filing a lawsuit, including Harvard. So I'm sure they looked at those legal actions, if that kind of helped push the case. And also, foreign students contribute so much to the economy. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars in tuition. Sandy was ready to contribute to the U.S. economy. His two daughters are in the U.S. So Sandy and Sandrina, I'll get to you, Sandrina, in a second. But Sandy, this was personal to you because your two daughters are in the U.S.
Yeah, very personal. And actually, last week we were all on the calls almost like every other hour just to make sure we're getting the best advice should the regulations be enforced right away. And my two daughters are in the US, one in Boston and one in New York City. And they were basically waiting anxiously of what would happen next. What would be the impact in terms of the fall semesters? Because one of the schools that my daughter's attending is actually going on a full online, and she's a senior. Does she need to renew some kind of paperwork, or what does the international students need to do there? She's not intending to go back for the summers and come back for the fall because of the travel restrictions. She's staying in the U.S.
Right. So if she currently has a student visa, which I'm assuming she does because she's still a student,
Yes.
that is going to be honored. So it's all the students who still already have their student visas that will no longer be restricted. Okay. So she's okay. She'll be safe. But the big question mark, even though they reversed this decision about international students, the big question mark is, what about students who want to come in the future, who do not currently have student visas, who would need to apply for those student visas? Is the Trump administration going to be putting restrictions on those future students? We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll hear about it in the coming weeks, because I've read several reports saying they are forbidding new students from applying, but the ones in the country are okay. Okay, Sandrina, this is going to upset your world if the decision had been enforced, because you were preparing to send your daughter to university, right?
Indeed, Dalton. So it has actually been quite a confusing 1 month for us because my daughter has been accepted by the Ohio State University, and up until last week they didn't offer any online options. So it was either to go there in person or take a gap year. But then a few days ago, we finally got information from the campus administrators that right now they do believe that no foreign students will be able to enter the United States. And also here in Indonesia, no visas are being issued by the US Embassy. So now everything has changed drastically, because we were about to buy a ticket to go to the States because my daughter did not want to take a gap year. But now Ohio State University is actually in the process of trying to decide what classes they could offer online to freshmen, because this was not available up until about a couple of weeks ago. So things have been changing drastically. But for sure now my daughter will not be able to leave, and they say maybe in spring, which is like, if I'm not mistaken, March next year, then they will reconsider and perhaps open the possibility for new students to go to the States. But
Oh, I see. So the decision, Sandrina, means that your daughter cannot go at this point, even though the
No.
order was rescinded.
No.
Right. Okay.
But there
Well,
will be online options now for international students.
okay, good point.
Studying
And by the way,
there.
there's about 4,000 or so, 4,500 Indonesian students who are going to school in the U.S., 1 million overall in the U.S. Okay, May, let's get to the maybe the larger issue we're talking about here. We touched on it earlier, and which you have been focusing on in your podcast, race relations in the U.S. You know, they seem to have severely and rapidly deteriorated since the George Floyd death. Even more public racism toward Asian Americans for the coronavirus situation, not helped by the administration. What's the bigger picture? Is it going to get worse before it gets better, May?
I like to think I'm an optimist, but because I'm a journalist, I'm usually not, because I look at things very realistically in terms of how things are panning out. Unfortunately, right now in the US, we are in a terrible way. There's no doubt about it. Race relations are frayed. Obviously, it's become very explosive because of the George Floyd and the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement, and the administration, certainly with Donald Trump's rhetoric, is not helping matters whatsoever. COVID-19 definitely raised the xenophobia against Asians to a level that we haven't seen in many, many years. A new report just came out. There have been over 2,000 hate crimes against Asians since March. And so these are either verbal assaults or physical assaults. So overall, it seems like racism has just shown its ugly face in ways that we haven't seen in a long time. It's as if the Pandora's box has been open, and the ugliness of racism is really showing up in every aspect of life. We're not just talking about the typical places like the Deep South. We're talking about California and Seattle and New York and Chicago. And so this is where I myself, as an Asian American who grew up in Ohio in the 1970s, I grew up with racism. But that was back then. But now that I see all this happening, it's like I have PTSD. It's reminding me of what it was like when I was a child.
America is not a racist country per se. I don't think so. But what you said was it maybe made it okay for people certain administration leaders, and I got to point to the president, made it okay for people to just say things that they felt but never said before. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say that America is not a racist country. I actually would not. I would disagree with that. America is a racist country. I think there's been systemic racism, which is why the African American community is speaking up so loudly about this. This has been systemic racism that has been around for centuries.
Okay, but you're saying, are there more racist than non-racist in America? I don't think so. I think most people are good.
No, definitely not. But let's put it this way. Racism and racist behavior has become more normalized.
Yeah, no, that's my point. Mei Lee, journalist, educator, thank you very much for your time in California. Please take care.
Thank you.
Okay, Hot Indo will continue shortly with travel tips, what you need to know if you want to visit this country or take a Bali break. You're watching Hot Indonesia with Sandrina, Sandy, and me. Here's hot topic number 2, travel tips. National and local governments are loosening travel restrictions, but still quarantines are in place, one's on the ground. Non-Indonesian residents still not allowed in. Now, it is now easier to travel domestically. If you have a rapid blood test plus proper documents, you can get in. Now, Sandrina, you just, as we mentioned, you went through the process to go from Jakarta to Bali. Can you kind of walk us through real quickly what you found when you went to the airport in Jakarta and then what you encountered in Bali?
Yes, just to begin with, people who would like to travel domestically in Indonesia, there are different rules for different areas, different provinces. For Bali, since the 5th of July, the governor of Bali has changed the rules. Prior to this rule that is now in effect, we had to take a PCR test, a swab test, before they would allow you to fly to Bali, but no longer. Now you only need a rapid test result. And that applies to also other areas, other regions in Indonesia, except for three areas in Indonesia still needs a PCR test result. That is Berau, that is in East Kalimantan, Samarinda, and Jayapura. Jayapura, if you are a local citizen, if you're a local resident, you can use a rapid test, but non-locals need a swab test. If you go to the terminal, the departure terminal, it also differs. For example, I went through the third terminal in Cengkareng. They would have this special counters. You have to go through gate 3, and then you go to these special health counters and they would go through your papers. What you need is the rapid test result, valid for 14 days, and then you have to download an application on your mobile phone. It's called E-Hack. E-Hack is the Indonesian healthcare health alert card. Download that and then choose E-Hack Domestic Indonesia, fill in the form. If you're going to Bali, there is another online form you have to fill in. That is the checkdiri.baliprof.go.id. That's it. Quite simple. After you get that done, then you're good to go. In Bali, as soon as you arrive, temperature check with thermal gun, and then you go to this counter, another counter where you take turns, you wait in line, and then they will check your documents. The letter, the rapid test result letter, has to be stamped in Jakarta. I forgot to mention that earlier. So you have to have that stamped. They will check for that stamp in Denpasar as soon as you arrive, and then they will check your phone for the application, E-Hack.
How much sooner did you have to get to the airport? Would you recommend to people as opposed to normal times, an hour earlier?
What I experienced that the the airport was totally empty.
Oh, okay,
and the
so-
flights were empty, so there were no queues. But I don't know if things pick up, because now flights can take up to 70% passengers. So maybe an hour and a half would
yeah,
be good.
Okay, an hour and a half earlier. That's good advice. Now, Sandy, I believe you've been out of Jakarta since in these past couple months as well.
One
Is the
time.
procedure, huh?
Only one time.
Okay. Was the procedure similar to Bali? And do you think what's being done at airports are adequate?
Well, your normal trip now have to be planned much earlier. In our case, it's about a week earlier. 2 days before we start completing all the paperwork necessary, including the test. I went to Pangandaran, and that's actually quite a small airport, and we fly with Susi Air from Halim. So we go through the same procedures. The airport was very empty, and because there is no online, we fill in the yellow health card. And upon arrival, because it's actually, we landed at the private Susi airstrip, it was a very, normal temperature check, and off we go. And coming back to Halim, same treatment. You have to fill in the cards, and you have to go through temperature checks. And I guess you need to be in the airport a little bit early, like a couple of hours, 2 hours before the flight. That would be safe. But only with these procedures that we could solve the economic issues, in particular tourism, because we are seeing numbers of cases increasing even in South Jakarta, where I am now. And if we are disciplined with these procedures and making sure that we are getting used to this bubble, sort of like a travel bubble, in a way, I think we could have this new reality on the tourism sector, because I see people on the plane also use gloves, all disposable disposable materials on the service, and people are being careful, Dalton.
Okay. One last point. Now, as far as outbound travel, Indonesia is not on any of the initial lists of countries allowed in, and I think that's rightfully so concerning, given our situation here, testing and number of cases. So anyway, more Hot Indo is ahead. Money miracle. Would you return a bag full of cash in a plastic bag? You're watching Hot Indonesia from Jakarta. Here's hot topic number 3, money miracle. On July 6th, a train between Jakarta and neighboring Bogor was in the station and being cleaned by worker Mujani. He saw a plastic bag under a priority seat and thought it was trash. Inside, though, was 500 million rupiah, or the equivalent of $35,000. Now, he turned it in to the authorities, or to his boss, and the owner did come to claim it not long after. You know, an incredible story of honesty, and actually quite surprising if you ask me. What do you guys think?
I'm feeling very optimistic that such compassion, even in this pandemic situation, is our national fabric. It's returning what is not yours. It's basically not taking, even a slightless hint of maybe taking some and returning some, but it's basically doing the right thing, and I'm very, very hopeful if our countrymen are showing this as a good example and share this very heartwarming stories. I think it makes me proud as Indonesian.
Yeah, on an average day, the company says that at least 8 to 10 items are left on trains. They include motorcycle helmets, bags, laptops even, and they're kept until someone claims them. But in a case of cash, that's pretty much untraceable, right, Sanjina? I mean, it's incredible.
Honestly, amidst all the negativity, Dalton, that's been going on, we've heard so many bad news during the last few months. This is a spark of real hope, very positive for the people. His honesty is outstanding. I mean, just by saying he has no right that that money belongs to somebody who must need it more than him. And funnily enough, actually, it's very common in Indonesia, here, I don't know elsewhere, to bring valuable like money, for example, from the bank in a plastic bag for people not to notice that it's money. So to avoid robbery, they do things like that. But maybe this guy, he was quite old and elderly. Maybe he forgot, and people did think it was cash. But for Mujani, I do believe, especially in such tough times, the company should give him a reward, because he has become such a good example, a good Samaritan, and that should be highly appreciated, Dalton.
Yeah, let's check and see if he did get some kind of reward, financial reward. Otherwise, let's chip in and give him something. I mean, we talk about
I agree.
These kind of issues all the time, and let's reward somebody who does the right thing, as Sandy said. At least a Hot Indonesia t-shirt. Okay. But more. He deserves more than that.
This is a good
Okay,
example. Dalton, this is a very good example, and to show, and it makes people should be embarrassed if they're in the high office and taking whatever it's not their entitlement. I think Mujani shown the true honest behavior that the value of Indonesians and all human beings are being showcased. It's really a good example.
Yeah, very good point. At the higher levels, corruption and all this stuff we talked about before, and here at the low level, he's returning a lot of money. Okay. It is feedback time now, and we want to hear from you wherever you are watching us. Azalia posted this on Instagram after our female co-host dismissed skin whitening products. Love this, Tanta Sandrina. Of course, Tanta is the affectionate term for auntie here. She speaks the truth. She does. And this from Melbourne. Adi posted this on our YouTube page. The three of you should make a TikTok video. As soon as we get back into the same room, maybe we'll try, right, guys?
Sure.
Okay. Here's how to contact us with your silly feedback or serious ones. Email hotindo@theindonesiachannel.com or comment through our Hot Indonesia or Indonesia Channel Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages. Final words, Sandrina.
Yes, Dalton, you would love this. Finally, even though perhaps still reluctantly, Trump dons a mask. And in full reversal, he urges the American people to wear the mask. And Brazilian president also, Bolsonaro, who like Trump has refused to wear the mask, is now still in quarantine after he got infected by the virus. So again, to everyone out there watching this episode, please just wear the mask wherever you go in public spaces. I protect you, you protect me, and therefore it's our responsibility to give the best and do our responsibility, just as simple by wearing a mask. Stay healthy, stay safe.
We'll say it again and again. Okay, final word, Sandy.
I do agree that we need to make a TikTok video as part of Hot Indonesia, but more seriously, I think the number of new cases are hitting some of the alarming stage now, and we can only solve the economic issues is by implementing effective health and safety measures. So guys, like what Sandrina said, please adhere to the strictest applications of COVID-19 health protocol. Be safe. Don't take this lightly. Be safe, please.
And my final words, there are a lot of phony stories and misinformation on social media. I've heard more conspiracy theories in the past few months than in my entire life. But you know what? Let's be thankful, especially in this pandemic period, that we have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's keeping us connected with those important to us and helping us reconnect with long-lost friends, reaching out across the world. And that is Hot Indonesia for this week. For Sandrina Malakiano, Santiago Uno, I'm Dalton Tanonaka. Thank you very much for watching, and join us again next time.